exciting to have you guys here. I am Alana Rusnak. I am editor-in-chief of Blank Spaces magazine. And since the beginning of the magazine, it has been my goal to create a space that is open and welcoming to Canadians, no matter where they are in their creative journey. And I believe a strong voice speaks louder than a resume. And it's been a thrill since the launch of the magazine in 2016 to give a launch pad to so many diverse authors, which you guys can count yourself among those authors now too. Every quarter, the magazine runs a contest, a write prompt contest. So I provide an image, people write a short story based on that image. And I've enjoyed that process. That's been fun. So out of that, I pushed the idea of a cash contest because I believed it would reach others that the image prompt didn't. And raising the stakes a little bit does pique the interest of some people that you're not reaching otherwise. So it was exciting to see some new names adding their entries to that pot. It's nice to see like this. I still think of Blank Spaces as this tiny little thing that I do in my little office, but it's really exciting to see how it's kind of expanding and spreading its fingers all across Canada. And like we have people here represented from all over the country, which is really great. So thank you for being part of that growth and that expansion. That's really great. Because Blank Spaces is currently run entirely by volunteers, I decided to have the first round of judging for this contest to be peer-based, meaning a beginning excerpt was shared on our website and people were invited to vote for their top 3. So it was really fun to see the engagement of that, but I do think we may change the approach or explore something new in the future so that it's equally fair to anyone who maybe doesn't have the same kind of large social media following. I know some of you have some strong platforms and that's amazing. And there were some people, a few people actually withdrew their entry because they felt they didn't have a fair shot. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you win some and you lose some, right? You can't please everybody. But that is something that I would like to explore with the Blank Spaces team a little more to find something that's a little more inclusive. So once that long list was determined by the social vote, those top 20 stories were distributed to the panel of judges, all of whom have been volunteering with Blank Spaces for most of its existence. Haley is here. Hi, Haley. Joining us from England tonight. There was also McLaughlin and Heidi Eastman. So we all took those top 20, made our own choices, and then we came together over a Zoom meeting and had some healthy debate over our top choices and came to an agreement on our top 8, which are the 8 finalists that are represented here tonight. From that point, those stories were sent to Rachel Laverdiere. Did I say that right? Yes. Okay. You're going to get to meet her a little more in a little bit, and we'll all learn her top choice together when she's ready to announce that. So I want to say a big congratulations to all of the finalists, and I'm so thrilled you could all be here tonight to do this. It's so much more special to see your face, to give you an opportunity to share a bit of your story. Then, I mean, I could have just emailed you, or Rachel could have emailed you the choice, but this is awkward and fun, so that's great. So I think let's just dig right into the readings. You guys ready for that? Yeah, okay. So I didn't know how to choose the order of who's gonna read, so I wrote your names on little scraps of paper and put them in a box and drew them. So that is how we got the order. It means nothing in regards to what Rachel's final choice is, so don't read anything into it. But we're going to start with Dawn Miller. Dawn holds a BA in English from Queen's University in Canada and is a member of the Canadian Authors Association, Canada Council for the Arts, and Women's Fiction Writers Association. Her short fiction has appeared or is forthcoming in the Main Review, Type House Literary Journal, Veranda Literary and Art Journal, Loud Coffee Press Literary Magazine, and the Canadian Authors Association 15 Stories High Anthology. One of her stories has recently been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Currently, she is querying her debut novel, which is a finalist in the Novel Slices Summer Excerpt Contest 2021. And Dawn will be reading an excerpt from her story, Howl.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to share my work. I really appreciate it. And this is fun. It is fun and awkward. It's fun, mostly fun. And congratulations to all the other writers. Okay, so I'm going to read from near the ending of my story. And it's from the point of view of Buddy, the dog. That night they wandered farther from the cabin than usual. A lonesome howl split the night. Buddy's head raised and a low growl reverberated in the pit of his gut, traveling to the base of his throat. The man stopped in a clearing, and he and Buddy stared up at the rainbow in the night sky, spinning and whirling like flashes of trout and salmon in the river. As the weather turned cold again, the man stayed with Buddy in the warmth, leaving only occasionally. He returned with boxes and bags he let Buddy sniff before tucking them away. The hairless man visited only once more, and once a young woman with long hair and a soothing voice appeared. She petted Buddy gently and kissed him on top of his head. Many times when the snow had melted and birds woke Buddy at daybreak, another woman came. She moved like an injured deer, carrying a stick to balance herself. She'd wring her shaky hands and sob while the man stared out the window. Eventually, no one visited, and the man grew silent. Deep snow cycled with softening earth over and over. Each time the cold surrounded the cabin, the ache in Buddy's bones deepened. A storm howled and snow piled against the window. The man fell asleep on the cot, wrapped in a blanket. Buddy barked and whined at the door, nipped at the man's shirt, and licked his face. Still, the man didn't get up. Buddy searched for that spot where the boom, boom, boom made his heart quicken. Only stillness remained. A chorus of howls rang in the distance. Buddy scratched at the door. A growl, wild and low, stirred deep inside. His tired bones grew stronger. He pushed and clawed until the wood cracked and splintered, ramming the door with his shoulder. He cast himself into the frigid dark, like the man tossing a pebble into the river. The growl grew heavy in his throat as he sprinted to their favorite clearing, where salmon did figure eights in the night sky. He barked for the man to follow, and then ran on legs strong and sure, the limp gone. Footsteps crunched on the packed snow, and Buddy glanced back with his dark eyes to where the man sprinted behind, his laughter echoing across the whiteness. Flashes of evergreens flickered through the man's body as Buddy waited for him to catch up, and then they ran faster, swifter, stronger into the night. They reached the clearing and stood side by side. Buddy pressed his weight into the man, his heart quickening. 1,000 lights sparkled above. Buddy gazed at the rainbow twisting and swirling. Somewhere deep, deep inside, a sound awakened. Snout to the sky, he howled, bright and clear. The notes soared over the snow and burst above the treetops until they faded into the night. Thanks.
Thank you, John. It's so weird with everyone muted. You feel it though.
I feel it. Thanks.
Next, we have Cheryl Skory, Suma. After suffering a traumatic brain injury, Cheryl left the Canadian healthcare company she'd founded and returned to her first love, writing, as part of her recovery process. A Pushcart nominee, Cheryl's fiction, creative nonfiction, and poetry have appeared in US, UK, and Canadian publications, including National Flash Fiction Day 2021, Flash Flood, Second Chance Lit, Fatal Flaw Literary Magazine, Blank Spaces Magazine, Spider Road Press, Long Ridge Review, Nightingale and Sparrow, and others. Her second novel, God's Playground, was a 2019 Screencraft Cinematic Book Competition semifinalist, and her various works have placed in 19 competitions in 2019 to 2021. Most recently, the shortlist of 5 South's 2021 Short Fiction Prize, semifinalist River Styx 2021 Microfiction Contest, and semifinalist Ruminate Magazine's 2021 The Waking Flash Prose Prize. Cheryl has an MHSC Speech Language Pathology and SBSC Psychology. Cheryl will be reading a selection from her story, Finding Words in Stages.
Right, thanks, Alana. And again, congratulations everyone for being here and all the wonderful stories you've done. My story follows the cognitive and language decline of a patient with Alzheimer's disease. And obviously I'm drawing on my past as a speech pathologist. I thought it would be interesting to write a story rather than from the caregiver perspective, from the actual mind of the patient going through the stages of Alzheimer's. And so this follows her diary. And I'm going to read from stages 4 through 5. So she's in denial, but it's towards the latter stages of the disease. And I timed this under 5 minutes, so cut me off if it's not, but it should be under. Okay. Sunday, July 3rd, 2016, stage 4. My son is coming to take me to dinner. He comes on church day, which is funny because neither of us goes to church. Someone who used to live here went to church though. He used to drag my son to church with him while I enjoyed some quiet time writing. He was my son's father. No, not just father, mine. He was mine. My son's name is, the name doesn't matter. It's the person that gives it meaning. I'll use it in my next article, once I'm writing again. Other than the diary, I haven't felt up to it as late. When I'm feeling better, I'll return to it. Maybe I'll write about fathers that drag their sons to church while their mother writes. So many stories left to tell. My son is tall, with a kind smile. He wears sweaters and waves his arms when he speaks. I know he's mine. That is my son, I say to myself whenever he comes. I practice. We're all getting older after all. It's good to exercise the brain. Sometimes for a minute, I think he's Stephen. Stephen was my husband. He also liked to wear sweaters and wave his arms. I always smile at him when he arrives, so he knows I'm all right and that I know him. Last winter, my son arranged for a young lady to start coming 3 afternoons a week. She does laundry, housekeeping, and makes me dinners, then writes notes so I can reheat them in the cooking box. It's as if I don't know how to use a cooking box. She calls it something else, though. Microphone? English is not her first language, so I don't correct her, as I'm sure she's trying her best. The same week she arrived, my son hung a chalkboard by the front door. He writes me notes in bright pink chalk. So sweet. Today's message says, be ready to leave at 5. He also hung a digital clock beside the chalkboard. He said it'd be easier for me to read than the kitchen face clock. I like the kitchen clock. It's brass and stately and makes a reassuring clunk on the hour. Someone I love bought me that clock. I know all about clocks. A digital clock is an ugly clock. It is more reliable though. I can admit that. I'm not so stubborn. It says 4 something. 4 comes before 5. I know this. I start getting ready, so my son knows I'm fine. I search the hall closet for my wool coat, which I find in the corner behind the thinner sweaters. Who would put it way in the back in this weather? After I've wrapped its warmth around me, I pull out my favorite scarf and gloves from the top shelf. I'm ready. I admire myself in the hall mirror. Clearly, someone who's on top of things. Just as I'm starting to sweat, I hear a knock. I open the door. Proud to show him, I watch the time, and I'm ready. Son, right on time. He frowns. Mom, why are you wearing your winter coat? The question is, why are you not wearing yours, young man? I smile, so he knows I'm not judging him. This is my son. He sighs. Let me help you take it off. It's summertime, Mom. Summer. Oh no, he's disappointed. Did I make a mistake? I smile and wave off his helping hands. I tell him I was just joking as I put the coat back in the closet. When we step outside, I'm surprised to see that it is in fact summertime. Saturday, February 10th, 2018, stage 5. The boy that comes around a lot gave me this record box. Not writing diary, talking diary. Marks the date. I am fine. Whose clothes are these? Mine, all strewn about. That girl who mixes things up has laid out my clothes. I want to go to bed, not get dressed. I tell the record box about girls who mix up things. Where did I put words? A rap on the door. Miss, would you like me to read to you? If I ignore her, she'll leave. No, not this time. She's come in. Oh, you're not dressed. Let me help you. It's almost 10. After we read, let's walk to the park and watch the children play for a bit before lunch. Treats me like a child. Hide the record box. Record her, so the boy knows she's a confused one. She does things in my house, bossy things. Then the words come. Who are you, darling? I will outsmart her. It's me, Blessica, miss. I'm a friend of Jack's. He hired me, remember? I've been living here for over a year now, to help you with whatever you need. No help? Fine. I'm mad, but the words are gone again. My house, time for bed. I push her and her presumptuous name down to the floor, and we both fall. Not blessed. We are not blessed. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Cheryl. And we are going to move on to Ronald. Ronald Zajac was born and raised in Montreal, where he completed a BA and MA in English literature at McGill University. His work has previously been published in Matrix. He is a journalist at a daily newspaper in Brockville, Ontario. Working the community desk reveals that, while the devil is in the details, God is in the stories they reveal. He is currently working on a novel and a short story cycle. He enjoys spending time with his family, posting nature shots on Instagram, and listening to classical music, and an addiction he treats with healthy doses of jazz. Ron will be sharing from his story, The 5 Sorrowful Mysteries.
Thanks, everybody. It's a privilege to be here. In my capacity as a journalist, I'm used to these Zoom meetings of coming up at the very end and asking questions. So I have to resist that urge now and dive straight into this. This story is based a little bit on the demolition of a church in our community, and it's structured a bit. It is structured metaphorically around the sorrowful mysteries of the Catholic Rosary, for those who are familiar with that. And while I'm not going to get through all 5, it does require me to start from the beginning. The 5 Sorrowful Mysteries. As he swung his dull middle-aged frame over the fence, he repeated to himself, "They won't charge me for stealing junk." He landed with a loud, graceless scrape, gravel and dirt rolling slowly down the slope, enough to draw attention even at 3 a.m. The nails and broken glass meant he couldn't just scurry to the bottom of the pit where the streetlights didn't reach. Lead all souls to heaven, especially those in most need of thy mercy, because they should have just asked for the damn piano when they had the chance. As he felt his way slowly to the bottom, he could hear Fiona laughing. Her gentle approval of his transgression registered in the chirping of the crickets and the graveyard shift traffic on the distant highway. Partway down the slope, he stubbed his foot on rebar. The first sorrowful mystery, the agony in the garden. Some garden. He limped carefully through the back end of the demolition pit. Above him, the excavator stood silently against the stars, jaws closed. He rounded the quarter shell that remained of Trinity Anglican Church, then ducked the jagged shelf of the stage. "Father, by the merits of the agony in my left foot and the rotten egg gypsum dust on my clothes, have mercy." He turned on his cell phone flashlight. The piano was right where he saw it land. Her playing gathered them all around the piano on this church hall stage that summer afternoon. Fiona swaying and smiling the way she did when the music transported her, curly hair bouncing to the melodies, the day they said goodbye. The church was kind enough to give them back their non-denominational stage for one last afternoon, and they went through some of the songs from their high school theater years. Yes, he did dream of being in showbiz long ago, but he didn't have the voice, and on that late summer afternoon, it really showed. After the singing, she went back over the recital pieces, Chopin, Grieg, Rachmaninoff, Ravel, that one short, soft piece that made her exquisite body move, and the way she did that thing with the rosary. He never did say what he should have said. What piece was it? 30 years, scrambles, recollections. She played many pieces, but just one moment might have mattered. The moment after the rosary dropped, when the gears in his brain jammed again like they always did, with nightmares and terrors, when he should have told her what he wanted to say. But in that moment, he kept silent. The second sorrowful mystery, the scourging at the piano. The memory of that brain attack came back yesterday. It rose like dust over the last forgotten stained glass window as he stood on the other side of the fence with his long lens. The excavator jaws tore through what remained of the ceiling above the broken, exposed stage that once filled the back end of the church hall. The jaws closed up for another blow, then flattened the piano and brushed it aside. He snapped a shot of it, falling over the precipice of the stage. a discarded slate of wood, ivory, and battered metals crashing down with sawdust and structural steel. The flattened piano frame lay face up now. A bundle of protruding and sunken keys, a sick parody of the surface her fingers touched that summer day in 1989. The deformity of it made him think of her lying dead. He never even went to the funeral. He found out about it too late. Cancer sucks. So do life and distance and the inexorable erosion of unattended friendship. Father, by the merits of the one I deliberately forgot, have mercy. He turned out the light for his last few steps. No need to draw attention. Step carefully. This was not a DEFCON 1 brain attack just yet, but now the music in his head almost drowned out the prayers. Recital pieces he heard her play. He played now in his jagged mind, starting over again and again with two different pieces now, deciding which was the right one that happened just before the moment she let the rosary slip. With enough replays, he could recall the moment with precision, correct the omissions and deformities of time, preserve it as it happened, just like the picture he took yesterday. Once more, for precision, then, this is how it happened. She finished the Haydn piece, or was it the Norwegian one, Grieg, more like grief. She finished one or the other of the two pieces in his head. It was the Ravel, yes, of course it was. The one with the notes that spelled out the name of Haydn, something to do with 100 years since Haydn died, a minuet. Up there above the music, her joyful green eyes saw things he could never see. She would see those sublime truths in the years to come, while he discovered an accidental talent for money. She finished the minuet, then her eyes lit up as she remembered something. She pulled the rosary from her pocket, smiled to herself, leaned forward, pulled open the piano lid and let it slide from her elegant fingers into the unseen heart of the instrument. No dancer ever moved with more grace than Fiona at that moment, when she gently leaned over the piano and deposited that rosary with a delicate wink. As the others laughed and asked what she was doing, as she told them about her grandmother's impish Irish humor, she would have loved me hiding a Catholic rosary in an Anglican church. It's just something I wanted to do since she died, and I know it's hard to explain. He thought of telling her how he felt right now in front of everyone before their big goodbye at the end of summer, the start of university. They all know how I feel anyway, except maybe her. Not right, not for you, not for her. You will poison this exquisite beauty with the soiled failure of your misbegotten mind. Or better still, she will smile awkwardly, say something nice, and then never speak to you again. A kind of mercy kill. That's weird, but really sweet, one of the girls replied. Then silence. The others stood around the piano, leaned on it in that silence he didn't realize was sacred until he clumsily asked her to name the piece she just played, and his question landed there, just like the Judas excavator that would crush the piano into flattened wood, bent brass, and severed copper strings 30 years later. The others smiled indulgently. Fiona explained to him what he now remembered, with sudden and startling precision, as Menuet sur le nom d'Haydn, and Scott, the one who would be at her bedside 29 years later, started going on about Haydn. In the years that followed, he blamed himself for thinking too much. Technically, this was true. The third sorrowful mystery, a crowning with regrets. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. All right, next we have Julie. Born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, Julie Meier holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Calgary. Her writing has been published internationally in several anthologies and online journals. Her story, These Walls, was shortlisted for the 2020 Edinburgh International Flash Fiction Award. Julie will be sharing a piece from her story, The Direction of Home.
Thank you. Thanks to Blank Spaces for hosting the contest, and thanks, Alana, for getting us all organized. I also decided to start at the beginning. So this is The Direction of Home. She exhumed the remains of her childhood beneath the watchful eye of a meadowlark. The prairie grasses bobbed and swayed in a primal ballet around her. Scrabbling beneath the ash tree, hidden in that hollow, empty place, she dug and cursed herself for not bringing a larger shovel. She should have known that memories are notoriously difficult to unearth, especially the heavy ones, which have had to endure blizzards and thunderstorms, scorching sun, and relentless wind, with little to shield them from loneliness and decay. The arrowhead had pointed her here, steady and unwavering as always. Or rather, her therapist had pointed the way, gentle but firm in her suggestion that Alice should face her past, and the arrowhead had sealed the deal. She set it on the kitchen table that morning, worn edges blurring in the light as it spun, finally settling on east-northeast, the direction of her childhood home. And so, armed with nothing more than her purse, the arrowhead, and a garden trowel, she set out, driving until the foothills loomed heavy on the horizon and countless windmill blades hummed in the endless prairie gale. The familiar landmarks of town are surprisingly unchanged from the day she left 20 years previous. The grocery and hardware stores still hold their places, bookends to the shelf of Main Street, though their dilapidated roofs show the sag of age and their paint peels in rainbows, strips and splinters of their former glory. She sits taller in her seat and smooths down her hair, attempting to assuage the fears that any former neighbors who may be peering surreptitiously from behind dusty yellowed curtains at this very moment would find her equally dilapidated and exposed. She imagines it will take mere moments for the gossip to begin. Is that Alice Henley? Couldn't be. She hasn't been back since, well, you know. The realities of small town living, fed by the insecurities of the girl she was 20 years ago, the one who believed her town was passing judgment down every boulevard and around every cul-de-sac. She rubs the arrowhead for comfort, its familiar contours set deep within her pocket, then rolls up the window and adjusts the radio to drown out the imagined whispers. When she learned about the pregnancy, she immediately felt the heavy judgment of her family doctor as he peered at her over his half-moon spectacles. He was a stern man who had delivered her 18 years previous and who had set her arm when she was pushed off the couch during a wrestling match with her brother at the age of 7. The man assured her that, as an adult, she was free to make her own decisions about what would come next, and that he was not obligated to tell anyone about her situation. Regardless, she was sure the town was already ahum with the news of her demise by the time her canvas shoes took their first tentative steps through the door of his sterile office. The undercurrent of gossip runs swift in such a small town and has been known to drown the weak. You must remain ever vigilant, lest it sweep you away. She curated the box collection that night to represent her childhood: a lucky silver dollar from the fair, 2 rare marbles won in a playground battle, the ticket stub from a Rush concert, and a pink teddy bear. The bear was new. She had seen the stuffed animal in a shop window after her appointment and bought it on a whim, although she knew she could never keep it, the bear or the baby. Of course, there was no way to know whether the baby would have been a boy or a girl, but in her mind, she would always think of her as Rosie. The stuffed animal nestled in her lap on the drive home, a warm, comforting weight, and she curled around it that night to protect her from what was to come. When she woke, before losing her resolve, she called the abortion clinic in the city and made an appointment. The bear sat in the passenger seat on their 2-hour drive, keeping her company and offering support without judgment. She had fastened a seatbelt around it, snugly, though she felt silly afterwards for showing motherly protection towards a stuffed animal. But when the ordeal was over and she was merely herself again, and yet a little less, she tucked the bear into the wooden box and tried not to look into its shining eyes. She was 18 years old when she buried the box in that desolate place on a remote country road. The wind's fingers played a mournful tune in the native grasses, coaxing out stories of love and loss, teasing her hair loose from its ponytail. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Jenn Moffatt was one of those kids who checked out 30 books at a time from the library. She also loved to write, imagining she might one day become an author. Her curiosity about the world led to a degree in earth science, then, following in her parents' footsteps, education. It wasn't until life slowed down during COVID isolation that she began writing fiction again. She loves telling stories about falling in love and other tales of the heart. Jennifer lives with her husband and 2 daughters in the beautiful Okanagan Valley in British Columbia, Canada. Jennifer will be reading from her story, Love Comes Into Our Sight.
Thank you, Alana. I'm just incredibly flattered and grateful to be here. So thank you so much for having me, and thanks for being here, everybody. I'm going to start from the beginning, and I just wanted to write a bit of a supernatural story, and I thought about what someone might leave behind for love. One moment he was not there, and then he was, naked in the middle of the street, early on a cold December morning. He stood so calmly, so still, like nothing at all was wrong. I remember my first instinct was to look away, avoid him, not get involved. But then a car screeched to a halt and a red face yelled through the window, "Get out of the way, you freak!" And then there I was, running into the road myself, pulling my long winter coat off. "Here, put this on," were my first mumbled words to him as I placed it around his broad shoulders. He turned his head to look at me, and those eyes, they were the lightest blue I'd ever seen, the blue of a snowy landscape at dusk. His delicate fingers curled around the lapels as he pulled the warmth around himself. "Thank you." The angry driver laid on his horn, and I startled and gave him an impatient gesture. "Would you like to get off the road?" I asked the man. "Yes, that is a good idea." He seemed almost amused. But when he didn't move, I gently took his elbow and pulled him towards the sidewalk. "Are you okay?" I asked when we were safely out of the way and the traffic was flowing again. "I'm fine," he said softly, his face warm with a smile now. "What is your name?" "Edward." "And yours?" I shivered a little. I was wearing only a t-shirt and black jeans under the thick woolen coat that my mother had given me before I moved out. "Cale." His loose ginger curls hung softly around his face. "Cale." Saying it sent a thrill through my body. "Do you need any help?" He stared at me blankly. "You were naked in the middle of the street. Do you want me to call anyone?" He tilted his head. He was so clean, his skin and hair seemed to shine. "There is no one to call." I looked at my phone. My shift was starting in 5 minutes, and I wasn't sure what my options were. "Would you like to come to work with me? It's a coffee shop just around the corner. I have some spare clothes in my locker, and I could get you something to eat." "Thank you, Edward." My name fell off his tongue like 2 notes of a song. My brain spun with 1,000 questions as we hurried down the sidewalk, but they all felt rude and overly personal, or perhaps a little crazy. So instead, I said nothing and walked quickly, my head down against the wind. Fortunately, I was the first to arrive, so no one stared as I locked the door again behind us and hustled Cale into the back room. The extra clothes I had were clean, although would likely be a little small for him. I was tall, but he was taller and clearly in better shape. I had an old pair of sandals tucked away in the bottom of my locker, so at least those wouldn't squish his toes. I waved him into the bathroom, and he appeared again only moments later. It was jarring seeing him in my clothes, like he was just a regular person instead of the naked, glowing stranger in the cold morning light. The jeans were a little too short, the shirt a little too tight, but I liked how they looked on him. He smiled at me again, and I felt a warmth in my chest. "Are you hungry?" I asked, taking my coat back from him and hanging it in my locker. "You are very kind, Edward," he said, instead of answering my question, and I flushed. "Have a seat and I'll bring you some breakfast." He chose the chair closest to the counter and watched me as I ground up the beans and put the first pot of coffee on. I was toasting a bagel for him when I heard Sasha's keys rattling in the lock. "Hey," her greeting trailed off when she saw Cale. Hi," she said to him with a sideways glance at me. "Sasha, this is Cale. He's a friend I'm helping out a bit today." "Okay, hi, Cale." But the look she gave me said she would need more information very shortly. "Hello, Sasha," he greeted her warmly. "Please excuse my presence. I promise you will barely notice me." She replied noncommittally as she made her way behind the counter. She grabbed my arm and dragged me into the back with her through the swinging door. "Edward," she whispered, "who is he? What's going on?" I pushed my fingers through my hair. "God, Sasha, I have no idea. I just found him this morning in the middle of the street. He seemed alone and confused, and I just wanted to help him." "I'll bet you did. He's gorgeous." She turned and peered at him through the window in the door. I heard the beep of the toaster oven. "I have to get his breakfast," I mumbled, pushing my way back into the cafe. "Yeah, you go get his breakfast, Eddie," she called after me knowingly as the door swung shut. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. All right, we're going to Ace Baker next. Ace is a writer, poet, and writing coach from Vancouver, Canada. His short story, Victory Girl, won the Storyteller Award, and his poetry has won the SIWC, PNWA, and Magpie Awards, among others. Both his prose and poetry have been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and National Magazine Awards. Ace will be sharing from his story, and please forgive my Spanish. Menos coca más cacao. You're gonna have to fix that for me, Ace.
Beautiful. It means less cocaine, more chocolate, or less cocaine, more cocoa. So like Ron, I kind of riffed off a story, but it wasn't in my own backyard. It was something that was happening in Colombia, and gangsters were trying to force farmers off their land or like sell it to them cheap. And the reason was farmers were growing cocoa beans to make chocolate with, and the gangsters wanted to grow coca plants to get cocaine from. And so there was a lot of nastiness happening to force farmers off their land. And I thought it would be nice to write a bit of a revenge tale. So the protagonist, she's daughter of a farmer. His wife has passed on. And so it's just father and daughter on the farm. And there's recently been sort of not exactly an attack, but the gangsters showed up at the farm and they hid out while the gangsters kind of trashed their place. So it was a close call, but they're all okay. She ran into town to get find some help. Her boyfriend is a police officer, and Hector. And so she ran into town to get some comfort from him and fell asleep at his place, and then woke up and saw he's gone, probably to check on her dad. So she felt a bit guilty. So she's racing back to check on dad, make sure he's okay. So I'll pick it up from there. And here's where we go. I find myself with the gas pedal all the way down, rushing down a road at a speed I'm not sure I trust myself to drive. I'm expecting to fly off into a ditch at any second, when all of a sudden I'm there. I see Hector's motorbike outside, but I also see a black car I've never seen before. Did someone sneak up on him? Is he okay? I park on the road and sneak to the window. When I look inside, I don't see Hector, but I see 3 other figures all dressed in black, masks pulled over their faces, black scorpions. 2 are on either side of my father holding his arms. The third slips directly behind him and slits father's throat in one swipe of his arm. I'm frozen in place and see 2 images I'd never wished to see ever. My murdered father, of course, and the man behind him who now removes his mask, Hector. Cerveza, he asks the other 2, and when they nod and find a seat, he heads off in search of beer. I'm rooted to the ground, even though I know it's simple, move or die. So I will my feet to find their way back to the car, and I pull quietly away and pick up the pace once I think I'm at a safe distance to do so. I make one quick stop and then head over to Hector's, returning the car to the exact space it was parked in out front earlier, returning the keys to the ceramic bowl, returning myself to his bed. And I pull up the covers to my chin and wait. It's much later, hours, not minutes, when I hear him enter the room. He undresses fully. I can hear each piece as it falls to the floor. I'm up against the wall in a tight space where there is no escape. But as he pulls back the covers to climb in next to me, the image I've created gives him quite a shock too. I'm fully clothed. In fact, I have extra shirts and pants of his over top of my own. And I have a pair of rubber gloves that go all the way down to my elbows. In one hand, I'm holding a golden poison dart frog, the one I've just stolen after breaking into the reserve we have right here in Choco, Colombia, a land of happiness and hopelessness, of beauty and brutality, my home. The frog has enough poison in its skin to kill 20 humans on contact. And I think of my mother, and I think of my father, and I think of one sweep of the arm, and I rub that frog all over my lover's body and run out the bedroom door and down the stairs. And I step outside and let the frog go, feel the gloves from me so they're inside out, and stuff them in the trash can. And Hector is naked and he's not coming after me. And Hector is naked and he's frozen in place. And it's a simple decision, really, move or die. And he doesn't move. Thanks.
Thank you, Ace. All right, Lori. Lori Twinning writes both fiction and nonfiction, with her stories winning awards in literary competition and appearing in several anthologies. She's an active member of many writing groups: International Thriller Writers, Crime Writers of Canada, Romance Writers of America, Toronto Romance Writers, Writers Community of Simcoe County, and Ascribe Writers. She's a lover of books, sports, and bird watching, and a hater of slithering reptiles and beady-eyed rodents. Lori will be reading from her story, Fins, Teeth, and Surfboards.
Thanks, Alana. Congratulations to all the finalists. Thank you to all the judges for taking time to read our work, and especially to Rachel for making all the tough decisions in the end. We all appreciate you. My story explores the relationships, especially the ones between mothers and daughters. So I just want to give you a tiny heads up that I will be ending my short reading in the middle of a sentence. So just be prepared for that. Okay, so Fins, Teeth, and Broken Surfboards. Mona is my self-proclaimed therapist, who I know will take everything I say to her and twist it into being all about her. She'll continue to talk about it at every family gathering for as long as she lives. We have no secrets between us. I think about what to tell her and what to leave out. Pressing my shoulders into the back of the Adirondack chair, I inhale the aroma of barbecued shrimp as the rays of sunlight burn the eyebrows right off my face. The scorching temperature at Sabo Beach is well over 30 degrees Celsius, and I find it hard to believe my mother still wants to have lunch, beachside and at high noon. Mona drops a large bag near my feet. It works for most people, maybe not you, because you're stubborn like your grandmother. That's your father's mother and not mine. What is it? I peek inside. Fluffy gray fleece. It makes me sweat looking at it. There's no way I want a warm and fuzzy around me in the middle of this heat wave. It's a weighted blanket. Your father left it behind when he moved out of my house and in with the mermaid. He said it would help with my anger issues, and I'm sure he doesn't need it now that the mermaid takes care of his anxiety with her. Mona lifts her fist to her mouth and fakes a small cough. Never mind. Now I'm trying hard not to visualize the mermaid and my father. The fleece is soft and reminds me of a newborn kitten, but much heavier. This must weigh 100 pounds. 35. It's hard to get used to having that much weight draped over you while you're trying to sleep. But once you do, you won't sleep without it. It's therapeutic, like a giant hug from your Theo. Oh, thanks for the reminder. I roll my eyes. I need to forget those last 3 years ever happened. Mona dropped a few more items in the bag. While you're waiting to fall in love with your father's blanket, try the oil diffuser. I'm giving you a multi-pack of essential oils. You'll love the peppermint, sweet orange, or lemongrass. But whatever you do, don't use the lavender. The smell will send you to hell and back, reminding you of Grandma Lila and the upstairs closet. And if that happens, you'll never go to sleep. Oh, I don't sleep much now, thanks to the severe chest pains and nauseousness. Maybe you're pregnant. Nope. I've peed on a stick every morning this week, and only the one line appears. It's all good. I'm lightheaded, my hands shake, and I sweat nonstop. Google has narrowed it down to a possible stroke, heart failure, or Parkinson's disease. Did Google also tell you to make sure your will was up to date, leaving everything to your mother and not that sexy chef? I didn't think of that. There's no way I want Theo getting anything in mine. Well, you know what you should do? Asked Mona. She pours 2 glasses of red sangria, plops a chunk of pineapple on the rim, and adds a tiny yellow umbrella. You should. And that's where I'll leave it for now. If you want to read more about where the fins, teeth, and broken surfboards come into the story, you'll have to purchase the anthology to find out. Thank you.
Oh, yes. A good plug. Thank you, Lori. All right, finally we have Barbara Lehtiniemi. Barbara primarily resides in the fiction world inside her head and occasionally allows that to spill over to the page. She has published many pieces of nonfiction in several publications, including The Voice magazine, The Review newspaper, Chicken Soup for the Soul, and Maclean's. She won the 2018 Barbara Novak Award for Excellence in Personal Essay Writing, and in 2020 was longlisted in the New Quarterly's Nick Blanchford Occasional Verse Contest. Barbara has a fondness for travel, used bookstores, and everyday absurdities. She lives on a windswept rural road in North Glengarry, Ontario. Barbara will be reading to us from her story, On Edge.
Thank you, Alana. I'm going to be starting in the middle of the story, so I'll ask you all to imagine that you're a middle-aged widow that lives in the country, and a courier has dropped a parcel off on your front porch, and it does not belong to you. You wonder what Doug would have done with the box, and it's like you actually asked him a question, and he answered that you should just find out where it's supposed to go and take it there and be neighborly and stop hiding behind your work and get out and meet folks like you should have done from the beginning. And you know he's right, and you know you should have tried harder when you first moved here, and it would have been easier then when Doug was alive and gregarious and making an effort to immerse himself in rural life, and you kept putting it off because it's easier to work with words than with people, and that's why you're an editor, because it puts a buffer between you and the real world. And now the real world has landed on your porch, and your problem solver has been dead for almost a year, and you have to do something that makes you squirm, but there's really no way out of it. You look up G. McCaskill in the phone book, and it's easy to see what happened because his address is 9248 and yours is 2948, and your editor brain screams in agony because this typo is basically torpedoing your day. You struggle to pick up the box, wondering if it's books or bricks or what, and get it into the car. You know the sooner you get rid of the box, the better, because it's absorbing attention and you'll never be able to work with that nagging around the fringes of your mind. And even though this errand is souring your mood a bit, well, okay, a lot, you still laugh at yourself for reaching up to adjust the rearview mirror as if Doug was the last one to drive the car. And it's funny how these habits linger on, and God, sometimes you really miss them. Down to the end of the road, past where the pavement ends, and you feel like you're driving through a tunnel because the corn is so high and it's planted right up to the edge of the road. You start thinking that nobody knows where you are and nobody can see you, and maybe it isn't such a hot idea for a middle-aged woman of 5 foot, maybe 2 inches on a good day, to drive up to a strange house. And why on earth didn't you just phone G. McCaskill and tell him to come and get his own flipping box instead of being goaded on by Doug's eternal effervescence? Because surely he wouldn't want you to drive up to a stranger's house without him holding your hand and looking out for you. But here you are, and the peeling letters on the mailbox say McCaskill, and you're looking up a long dirt driveway, and you can barely see the house behind the fading leaves of late summer. And you wonder again if you aren't taking Doug's notion of neighborliness too darn far, because you're sure he never mentioned McCaskill. So maybe he's not one of the friendly locals, but a reclusive axe murderer, which is almost funny, but not ha-ha funny when you think about it, because you know everyone out here has axes and chainsaws and guns and buddies with backhoes to make bodies disappear, and you're delivering yourself like a lean side of meat. And stop being ridiculous and go up the driveway or go home, for Pete's sake. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's everyone. That is a little taste of the work of all our finalists. These stories are all going to be published in an anthology that is set to be released in April. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of that after we hear from Rachel. So Rachel is a writer, potter, and language instructor based in Saskatoon. She is creator of Hone and Polish Your Writing, creative writing program, creative nonfiction editor at Atticus Review, and a regular contributor at Entropy magazine. Rachel's writing is widely published in North American journals, including Green, The New Quarterly, The Citron Review, Bending Genres, and Atlas and Alice. In 2020, her creative nonfiction was shortlisted for Cutbank's Big Sky Small Prose Contest, made Wig Leaf's 50 Shorts, and was nominated for Best of the Net, and her flash fiction was shortlisted for a Geist 2015 short long distance writing contest. I have had the privilege of publishing a couple of Rachel's pieces in the past, and her dedication to literature and supporting other writers is what led me to invite her to be our grand prize judge this year. So I'm going to hand the proverbial mic over to you, Rachel. And I know you've prepared a little something to share with us. So way you go.
I sure did. I think the next time you have one of these contests, you should have each of the writers read an excerpt, because this gave me a totally different view, I guess. Yeah, it was interesting. And so I actually didn't know who wrote what until today. And so you guys did a great job. I would never have guessed that Jennifer was the author, because you did such a great job with the male point of view. And Ace, I would have never guessed that you weren't the daughter. Yeah, so it's interesting to put your names and faces to the stories. So as Alana said, I actually was published in this beautiful, it was volume 2, issue 2. So I first heard about blank spaces when I was writing fiction primarily. And Alana, as I can't remember who, somebody here said that Alana was very encouraging and responded quickly, and wow, it was amazing. And so Blank Spaces quickly became my favorite Canadian magazine, and not only because of Alana, but look how beautiful this is, right? Every issue is aesthetically pleasing. I've never seen another literary magazine that is as beautiful as Blank Spaces. So I was thrilled when she asked me to judge, because I love the magazine. And also because this year I decided that I was coming back to fiction. So I've had about 45 publications of creative nonfiction. They were gobbling it up, and I really want to write fiction. And so this year I started writing fiction again, and Alana asked me to judge, and I got lots of fiction published, and it's just like it was meant to be. And so enough about me. I've kind of come full circle now. I'm back in Blank Spaces, but as a judge now. This was really difficult. I just want you to know this. I read through everything. I'm a teacher, and so I had a rubric. I had like different things. I wanted to be fair. And so each of the stories was so different and had a different kind of tension, and held my interest. And in the end, I narrowed it down to 2. It was so hard to choose between those 2. I kept asking Alana questions. So what about this? What about that? So Alana actually doesn't know which one I chose. So I'm going to actually talk about how I chose the final 2, which one advanced. So I put on my editor's hat, and I thought, which one of these stories is actually most ready to publish? Which is easiest to read on the first read and makes the most sense, from start to end, without me having to go back and reread and try to figure things out. And so I'm going to tell you who the runner-up was first. So the runner-up was actually The 5 Sorrowful Mysteries by Ronald Zajac. It was beautifully written. There was so much humor in it. And as a Catholic myself, I understood. At first I was like, oh, what is this? And then I Googled. I was like, oh, yeah. And so it was wonderful. And then the one that actually I chose as the top was Ace Baker, Menos Coca, Mas Cacao. This story was captivating from the beginning to the end. I was like sitting on the edge of my seat, like, oh my gosh, are they going to be okay? I think that now that I know that Ace is also a poet, it makes sense, because I noticed the rhythm and the flow, and I was like, the pacing makes sense. You come from a poetic background, so that is my
announcement. So it was a pleasure reading everyone's work. I'm excited to buy many copies of the anthology and give them as gifts. Alana always does such a great job with the anthologies, and congratulations, everybody.
Thank you, Rachel, and congratulations, Ace and Ron, and all of you, congratulations. Ace, do you want to say anything?
Sure. Well, I just want to let Rachel know I did my university, my first degree in Saskatoon. So that's kind of a nice little connection, and I'm a teacher too. So thank you for the kind words. I was blown away by the readings today. I was just jotting down notes about everybody. I was like, oh, Dawn's point of view and the dog, and Cheryl's voice and the character coming through, and Ron and the connection to the story, and then Julie and her descriptions, especially of setting. I was just like blown away. Jenn, and I was like, teacher here, what's going on? And what someone might leave behind for love, and just the tone really hit me. For Lori, who writes thrillers, I found the relationships and the mothers and daughters that kind of spoke to me. I could hear that in it. So I found what a mix. Barbara, the parcel that does not belong to you, what a cool idea to launch a story with. And hopefully I didn't miss anyone, but I was just blown away by the readings, and I thought this was kind of a fantastic way to hear about it all. So thanks for doing this, Alana, and thrilled to be the final pick, but I think all the stories are wonderful.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, everyone, for making the job so hard for Rachel. And I mean, that's what you want, right? Is you want it to be a struggle. So great job. You guys rose to the challenge. That's amazing. So Ace, I'm going to be reaching out to you personally after this to get you your prize and to talk about all that involves. But you are all winners because your stories are going to be in the anthology. I think it's going to be, it is a really special collection because you've all approached it in such unique ways. Your voices are so strong and individual, and there's really something for everybody from any kind of background. They're going to find a voice within the anthology that's going to speak to them. So, I mean, that's a gift to me to be able to put that together and then get it out in the world. So thank you to all of you for that. I do want to share that I have a cover in the works. Ronald has he reached out to me after, I think it was after the shortlist was announced, and asked if I wanted to see the photo that he had taken that inspired his story. I said, of course. So he sent that to me, and I actually used that to create the cover art. I'm going to give you a little tease here. Can you see that? It's hard to see on the little screen, but there's a little tease. I've asked Ron if he wanted to share a little bit about his photo. If you're prepared to do that, Ron.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate it. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to be featured here because writing's my thing. Words are my thing, and I have a word brain. I never thought of myself as having a kind of space or spatiotemporal or visual arts brain, but photos are kind of like an addiction I do on Instagram when I have a chance. And but because of my job as a journalist, I do in a smaller paper, I do take lots of pictures. And as they were tearing this church down, I have a sort of fascination with, you might want to call it urban decay, or just old buildings and what happens to them and what they say about the past. And my colleagues were teasing me over how many standalone photos I'd put in the paper of this church being torn down. I mean, the news story is that they were building an apartment complex and they were tearing it down for that. So there was some news value. But one of these days I was just happened to stop by, and that was the day that this piano on what used to be the stage in the church hall, it had already been squished, as you'll see in that picture, almost to the point of looking like one of those keyboards, electronic things. And then it just sort of, they were scraping stuff off to clear the way, and it just I happened to be able to snap it when they were scraping this piano off, and it just fell like another piece of detritus. And I think that's what planted the seed for this story, because a piano is not a chair or a table or a desk. It's something that makes music, and when it's gone, it's a waste, So I thought to myself, well, what stories could revolve around this piano? And started to imagine something. Tried writing a flash fiction piece on that, and it was that flash fiction piece which I later expanded when I discovered that the theme for this anthology and this contest was the things we leave behind. And wow, what a way to leave something behind, other than to smash it into a little flat surface and sweep it into the pile of garbage. So that was the inspiration, and then serendipity was able to show Alana the image, and I'm just honored and thrilled to have it featured on the cover. It really this is like a fine meal and dessert all in one package, to have the story and the image. So I really appreciate that, and thank you very much.
Good. Well, thank you. So pre-orders are officially open. So if you go to the Blank Spaces website, under the shop link, click on books, you'll find it. It should be the first one that comes up. You'll be able to see the image a little better there. Kindle pre-orders are already up, so you can find that on Amazon. So please share the links, encourage friends and family and strangers and everyone to buy copies. Rachel said she's going to buy a whole bunch, so everyone should follow her suit. Yeah, because it's just a great way to support one another and to support Canadian literature, and just let's share the stories. I think that's really exciting, and I'm happy to be part of it. So thank you to each of you. Is there anyone that has a thought they want to share before we kind of wind up? Yeah, Ace. Yeah.
Oh, someone was mentioning poetic language before, but my favorite bit of poetry was by Barb tonight, and her name starts and ends with a B, and she had that lovely phrase, buddies with backhoes to make bodies disappear. And I just thought, wow, that's bold. So didn't want to get away without saying.
Nice, thank you, Ace. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming and indulging me in this. It was really nice to hear your stories in your own voices. Like Rachel said, it does change things, and it feels like a brand new story when you hear it in someone's own voice. So it's really fun to experience your work that way. So thank you for giving your time. Thank you for spending part of your night with me. And I will be in touch with all of you before too long in regards to the anthology coming together. You're going to get to see that as it comes along. So you'll be part of the process the whole way. That's all I got for you. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Alana.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Good job, everybody. Have a great night.